In this video, we're going to get an introduction to star schemas. So data elements generally fall into two categories. Basically, what are we measuring and what are we measuring by? So these two categories generally are called dimensions and measures. And this is evident by a lot of the business intelligence reporting tools that we use, such as Tableau. They separate their data elements into dimensions or measures. So dimensions are generally the categories or the business entities that we're going to measure by, and measures are simply the numbers that we're measuring. So we started talking about how the user views data as dimensions and measures, and since our data model will be used for querying, we want to optimize it for querying and not a transactional operations. So let's look at the concepts that make up our model. Then we'll learn how it all comes together, and lastly, we'll learn more advanced topics to handle various analytical challenges. So measures are stored in tables, and those tables are called fact tables. So in this course, we're going to use the terms fact or facts and measures interchangeably. And measures are just that. They're how we measure business events. So measures are about a subject. Some say that they're the verbs of the data warehouse. So some examples of these would be sales price or MSRP, dealer invoice, amount down, amount financed. And what do all these measures have in common? Well, they're all numbers. So generally our measures are numbers, and we're going to aggregate across the measures. So if we're going to aggregate those measures, what are we going to aggregate them by? And what we'll aggregate them by, we call our dimensions. So these are the subjects of the measures, or the subjects of our data warehouse. Some say that they're the nouns of the data warehouse. So these are things that we're going to report by. And normally these dimensions are text or characters. So let's look at an example question. What are the total sales by store for January 2015? Let's try to pick out the measures and the dimensions here. So if we look at the measure first, what is the measure here? The measure here would be total sales right here. And then what do we want total sales by? What are our dimensions going to be? Well, our dimensions are going to be by store, and then by time, which is January 2015. So we want total sales by store by date. Let's look at another example. How many iPhones were returned last quarter due to defects? So this time let's start with the dimensions. What are the dimensions in this question? Well, the first dimension is iPhones, so products. And our next dimension in this question would be last quarter. So that's time again. And there's one other dimension here, which is defects, or reason why the product was returned. So what would our measure be? Well, our measure here is how many. Essentially, it's a count. So what this question is asking is, give me a count of all the iPhones or products that were returned last quarter or by date due to defects or by reason. And that's how we're going to model for our decision support system or data warehouse.